When my daughter-in-law told me I had 2 days to pack my belongings and leave my own family home, I laughed in her face, thinking it was some kind of cruel joke. Days later, I was standing on the sidewalk with nothing but 2 suitcases and a broken heart. That's when I realized family is like quicksand. The harder you try to hold on, the faster you sink. If you're watching this, hit that subscribe button and tell me in the comments if you've ever been betrayed by someone you trusted. Because believe me, this story is about to get more twisted than a tornado in a corkscrew factory. I never thought I'd be homeless at 63 years old. Not after 40 years of marriage, raising a wonderful son, and building what I thought was the perfect family. But life has a way of surprising you when you least expect it. My name is Margaret Wilson. Maggie to my friends, though these days, I'm not sure who those are anymore. My husband Richard passed away 18 months ago after a sudden heart attack. The grief was overwhelming, but I had my son Stephen to lean on. Or so I thought. "Mom, you should move in with us," Stephen had said at the funeral, his arm around my shoulders. "Ellie and I have that big house with plenty of room. The kids would love having their grandmother around." Ellie, my daughter-in-law, had nodded in agreement, dabbing at tears that never quite reached her eyes. "We insist, Maggie. Family should stick together during times like these." I was reluctant at first. Richard and I had our own home, a beautiful colonial we'd purchased 30 years ago when Stephen was just a boy. But it felt so empty without Richard, and the maintenance was becoming difficult for me alone. Plus, the house was part of a trust Richard had set up, half mine, half Stephen's. "Just until you get back on your feet," Ellie had said with that perfect smile of hers. The kind that television anchors practice in mirrors. I should have seen the warning signs. The way her smile never reached her eyes. How she'd suddenly stop talking when I entered a room. The hushed arguments between her and Stephen that would cease the moment I appeared. But grief has a way of blinding you. So I sold most of my furniture, rented out my house, and moved into their guest suite with a few treasured possessions I couldn't part with. Script part separator ===. Things were fine for the first few months. I helped with my grandchildren, 8-year-old Emma and 6-year-old James. I cooked dinners when Ellie worked late at her marketing firm. I kept the house tidy and even planted a vegetable garden in the backyard. I was making myself useful, or so I thought. Then things began to change. Small things at first. "Maggie, I've reorganized the kitchen cabinets," Ellie announced one morning. "Your cookware is now in the basement storage. It's just cluttering up my space." My space. Not our space. My space. Then came the comments about my outdated parenting advice. "We don't discipline children that way anymore, Maggie," she'd say with that condescending smile whenever I suggested Emma shouldn't be on her tablet during dinner. Studies show. I bit my tongue. After all, I was a guest in their home. Or so I kept telling myself. Then Richard's life insurance payout finally cleared, a substantial amount that would secure my future. The very next day, Ellie's attitude shifted dramatically. "Stephen and I have been talking," she said over breakfast, not meeting my eyes. "We think it's time you found your own place." Stephen stared at his coffee, silent as the grave. "My own place?" I echoed, my spoon freezing halfway to my mouth. "But I thought." "It's been almost a year, Maggie," Ellie cut in. "The arrangement was always temporary, remember? The kids need that room for their activities. And frankly, Stephen and I need our privacy back." "Stephen?" I looked at my son, hoping he'd defend me. He just shrugged, still not meeting my eyes. "Mom, we think it's for the best," he mumbled. "We've found some lovely senior apartments," Ellie continued brightly, sliding a brochure across the table. "Very affordable on your new financial situation." The subtext was clear. Now that I had money, I was being pushed out. But why? We had plenty of space. The children loved having me around. Something wasn't adding up. What I didn't know then was that this was just the opening move in Ellie's calculated game. A game where I was nothing but a pawn to be sacrificed. Script part separator ===. I had 48 hours to pack. 48 hours to dismantle the life I'd carefully rebuilt after losing Richard. 48 hours before my own son and his wife would put me out on the street. I don't understand, Stephen, I said later that day, cornering him in the garage where he was pretending to organize tools. Is this really what you want? To throw your mother out? He couldn't even look me in the eyes. It's complicated, Mom. Complicated? I'm your mother. I lost your father. And now I'm losing you too? Explain the complicated part to me. Stephen sighed, running his hands through his hair, just like his father used to do when stressed. Ellie feels crowded. She says having you here is affecting our marriage. And what do you feel? I asked. He just shrugged again. My son, once so strong and outspoken, now reduced to shrugs and mumbles. I need to support my wife. And not your mother? My voice cracked. Mom, please don't make this harder. We'll help you find a nice place. With my money, I said flatly. Stephen had the decency to look ashamed. The life insurance will set you up nicely. You'll be fine. Fine. As if being alone at 63 was fine. As if being evicted by my own flesh and blood was fine. The next morning, I overheard Ellie on the phone. No, it's working perfectly, she whispered. Once she's out, we'll start phase 2. Yes, the house too. Stephen doesn't suspect a thing. Trust me, by Christmas, everything will be ours. My blood ran cold. This wasn't just about getting me out of their house. She was after my home too. The home Richard and I had built, the home that was legally half mine and half Stephen's through the trust. I quietly retreated to my room, mind racing. Suddenly, Ellie's eagerness to help me find a place made sense. She wanted control of both properties. And my son was either complicit or completely manipulated. I needed proof. I needed time. I needed allies. But I had none of those things. On the morning of the second day, I stood on the porch with my suitcases, watching Ellie's satisfied smile as she closed the door on me. I heard my grandchildren crying inside, asking where Grandma was going. I heard Ellie's sugar-sweet voice. Grandma needs her own space, darlings. We'll visit her sometimes. Script part separator ===. I took one last look at what had been my home for the past year, then walked away with as much dignity as I could muster. My neighbor from across the street, Martha, was watering her flowers and witnessed the whole humiliating scene. Maggie? Everything all right? She called out, concern etching her face. I forced a smile. Just fine, Martha. Apparently, I've overstayed my welcome. Martha abandoned her gardening and rushed over. This is ridiculous. Where are you going? The lakeside motel for now, I said, my voice steadier than I felt. Until I figure things out. Absolutely not, Martha declared, taking one of my suitcases. My guest room is yours for as long as you need it. That's how I ended up across the street from my son's house, with a front row seat to the drama unfolding in what had been my life. And what a view it was. Within days, Ellie's mother moved into my former room. The same woman who supposedly couldn't travel for Richard's funeral was now happily installed in my place. The pieces were falling together, and the picture was ugly. From Martha's spare bedroom window, I watched Ellie transform my vegetable garden into what she called a meditation space, complete with an expensive stone fountain delivered the very next week. My grandchildren looked out their windows every night before bedtime, and I'd wave to them from across the street. 3 days after my eviction, Stephen showed up at Martha's door. Mom, he began, looking miserable. Save it, I cut him off. I saw your mother-in-law moved in before my sheets were even cold. Stephen shifted uncomfortably. Ellie said her mother needed help after her surgery. What surgery? I asked pointedly. Her knee replacement, he mumbled. Really? Because she seems to be dancing around her backyard just fine. I can see everything from here, Stephen. Script part separator ===. Stephen at least had the decency to look ashamed. Mom, it's not what you think. No? Then explain it to me, I challenged. Explain why I was thrown out of my son's house while my replacement was already packed and waiting. He sighed heavily. Ellie says we need her mother's help with financial planning. She's restructuring our investments. Financial planning, I repeated flatly. And what exactly are these investments? It's complicated, Mom. Real estate stuff. Ellie says we can triple our portfolio by Christmas if we follow her mother's advice. That confirmed my suspicions. I kept my voice steady. Does this real estate stuff include my house, Stephen? The one your father left in trust for both of us? His eyes widened slightly before he looked away. Ellie mentioned something about consolidating assets. I bet she did, I said coldly. And what does your lawyer say about breaking a legal trust? We haven't exactly talked to a lawyer yet, he admitted. I felt a surge of both relief and anger. So you're planning to hand over your inheritance without legal counsel? The house your father worked 30 years to pay for? Based on investment advice from a woman who sells costume jewelry at mall kiosks? How did you know that's what her mother does? Stephen asked, confused. Because unlike you, I actually checked her background when she first came into our lives, I snapped. Your father and I were too polite to mention it. Stephen looked stunned. This was clearly news to him. Stephen, I said more gently, what's really going on here? This isn't like you. He collapsed into Martha's armchair, suddenly looking exhausted. Ellie says we're in financial trouble. She's been handling our money since we got married. Last month, she told me we might lose the house if we don't take drastic action. He ran his hands through his hair. She says the only way out is to sell your house too. And you believed her without seeing any proof? I asked incredulously. Stephen, you used to be an accountant before you quit to work in her family business. She handles all our finances now, he mumbled. Says it's easier that way. A classic warning sign of financial abuse. My son was being systematically isolated and controlled, and I hadn't even noticed. Stephen, I said firmly, I need you to get me copies of your financial statements. All of them. Bank accounts, mortgage, investments, credit cards. Everything. Ellie would never. If you have nothing to hide, she should have no problem with you reviewing your own financial information, I interrupted. Unless there's something she doesn't want you to see. Script part separator . The doubt had been planted. I could see it growing in Stephen's eyes. I'll try, he said, finally getting to his feet. But I don't want to upset her. Things have been tense lately. 3 days later, Stephen appeared at Martha's door again, looking even more haggard than before. I couldn't get the statements, he whispered, glancing nervously over his shoulder. She's changed all the passwords. Says, I'm being manipulated by you. Martha, bless her heart, had connections everywhere. Her son worked at the bank where Stephen and Ellie kept their accounts. This isn't entirely legal, Martha warned me that evening, but Patrick says there's definitely something fishy going on. Large transfers to an offshore account starting exactly 1 week after your husband died. The betrayal cut deep. While I was grieving, while I was vulnerable, Ellie had been setting her plan in motion. But I needed more than suspicions. I needed proof. The next day, I received an unexpected visitor. Emma, my 8-year-old granddaughter, sent by her school bus driver to the wrong address, or so she claimed. Grandma, I miss you, she said, throwing her arms around me. I miss you too, sweetheart, I replied, hugging her tightly. Mom says you're sick and need to be alone, Emma confided. But you don't look sick. I'm not sick, honey, I assured her. Emma pulled out a folded paper from her backpack. I made this for you. It's our family. The crayon drawing showed stick figures. Stephen, Emma, James, Ellie, Ellie's mother, and me, standing apart from the others. See, this is our new house, Emma explained, pointing to a mansion-like structure. Mom says we're moving there after they sell the old houses. Old houses? Plural? Emma nodded. Mom says once the papers are signed next week, we'll be rich. She showed Grandma Carol the pictures of the new house yesterday. Next week? My heart raced. Whatever Ellie was planning was happening soon. As I walked Emma home, I noticed a for sale sign being installed in front of my old house, the one that was still legally half mine. The one Stephen had no right to sell without my permission. The game had changed. I no longer had months to uncover Ellie's scheme. I had days. Script part separator . It was time for drastic measures. That evening, I called my husband's former law partner, Douglas Bennett. Maggie, I was just thinking about you, Doug said warmly when he answered. How are you holding up? Not well, I admitted. Doug, I think Ellie is trying to steal my house. The one Richard and I own together. That's in the trust. There was a pause on the line. That's impossible without your signature, Maggie. The trust is ironclad. Well, she's got a for sale sign on the lawn right now, I said, my voice breaking. And Stephen's acting strange. I think she's manipulating him. I'll be there first thing tomorrow, Doug promised.
Don't worry, Maggie.
Richard made sure you be protected. That night, I barely slept. From Martha's window, I could see lights on late in my son's house. Shadows moving, animated discussions. Something was happening, and I was powerless to stop it. The next morning, Doug arrived at Martha's house looking every bit the distinguished attorney despite being in his 70s. I've brought the trust documents, he said, spreading papers across Martha's dining table. And I've put a call in to the real estate agency. They can't legally sell that property without your signature. But as he flipped through the papers, his expression darkened. This isn't right, he muttered. This page, it's been altered.
My heart sank.
What do you mean? Doug pointed to a clause. This gives Stephen sole discretion over the property. But that's not what Richard and I drafted. Someone has tampered with these documents. Could Ellie have changed them?
I asked.
Not without access to the originals. Doug looked troubled. I keep those in my office safe. A terrible thought occurred to me. Doug, who else has access to your safe? His face paled. Just my legal assistant.
Valerie.
Valerie, I repeated. Ellie's cousin Valerie? Doug's eyes widened. How did you know that? Because I remember her from Ellie and Stephen's wedding. She was the bridesmaid who kept calling Ellie cuz. The puzzle pieces were falling into place. This wasn't just Ellie's scheme, it was a family conspiracy. Script part separator ===. Doug was on his phone immediately, his voice terse. Valerie, I need you in my office right now. No. It cannot wait until tomorrow. While Doug dealt with his betraying assistant, I had another unexpected visitor, my neighbor Bill, who lived next door to Stephen and Ellie. Maggie, I think you should see this, he said, handing me an envelope. I've been collecting your mail that was accidentally delivered to me. This came yesterday. It was a bank notice addressed to me at Stephen's house. I tore it open and nearly collapsed. Confirmation of wire transfer, $750,000 to Cayman First Bank. $750,000. My entire life insurance payout. This is impossible, I gasped. I never authorized this. Martha looked over my shoulder and gasped. That's forgery. That's not even your signature. She was right. The signature was clearly fake, not even a good attempt at mimicking mine. But how? I kept my banking information locked in my personal files, which had been in Stephen's house, where Ellie had access to everything. I called the bank immediately, my hands shaking so badly Martha had to dial for me. I need to report fraud on my account, I said when a representative answered. I'm sorry, Mrs. Wilson, the bank officer replied after checking, but this transfer was authorized in person. You came into our branch with your ID. I did no such thing. Ma'am, we have security footage of you at the branch on Tuesday at 2:15 p.m. Tuesday at 2:15 p.m. I was at a doctor's appointment. I had an alibi. Check that footage again, I demanded. Because I was at Memorial Hospital with Dr. Kaplan at that exact time. One moment, please. The silence stretched for what felt like eternity. Mrs. Wilson, the bank officer finally said, her voice now concerned, the woman on our footage, she resembles you, but reviewing it more carefully, there are differences. Ellie's mother. It had to be. The woman was about my age and build. With the right clothes and a bit of makeup, she could pass for me to someone who didn't look too closely. I want to speak to your security team immediately, I said. And call the police. My identity has been stolen. Script part separator ===. By the time Doug returned from confronting Valerie, I was on my third hour with the bank's fraud department. The pieces were coming together in the most horrifying puzzle I'd ever seen. Valerie admits to altering the trust documents, Doug said grimly. Says Ellie paid her $50,000 to do it. But there's more. Valerie has been feeding Ellie information about all of Richard's assets for years.
Years?
I gasped. Even before Richard died? Doug nodded solemnly. She claims Ellie approached her 3 years ago. Said she needed help protecting the family assets from you. Painted you as some kind of spendthrift who would waste Stephen's inheritance. I felt like I'd been punched in the stomach. Ellie planned this for 3 years? While Richard was still alive. I've called the police, Martha announced, hanging up her phone. They're sending a detective. And I've got Patrick coming from the bank with all the records. The next few hours were a blur of police statements, bank officers, and legal documents. Detective Reynolds, a no-nonsense woman in her 40s, took detailed notes. So you believe your daughter-in-law forged your signature, impersonated you using her mother, altered legal documents, and is now attempting to sell property that isn't legally hers to sell? She summarized. When you say it all together like that, it sounds crazy, I admitted.
But yes.
Not crazy at all, Detective Reynolds replied. Financial elder abuse is unfortunately common. But this is more elaborate than most. Your daughter-in-law has gone to extraordinary lengths.
But why?
I asked. She and Stephen aren't hurting for money. Detective Reynolds raised an eyebrow. Are you sure about that? Script part separator . The detective's question hit me like a bucket of ice water. What do you mean? Stephen and Ellie make good money. They have that big house, nice cars. Martha and Doug exchanged looks. Maggie, Doug said gently, I've been reviewing their finances with the bank officer. They're drowning in debt. The house has 2 mortgages. Their credit cards are maxed out. Ellie's been living way beyond their means for years. But Stephen never said anything. He probably didn't know, Detective Reynolds said. Financial abusers often hide the true state of affairs from their victims. My head was spinning. Had my son been as much a victim as I was? Just then my phone rang. Stephen's number. Mom, his voice was urgent, panicked. Something's wrong. Ellie's mother just left with a bunch of suitcases. Ellie's freaking out, shredding documents. She doesn't know I'm calling you. Stephen, listen carefully, I said. The police are here. You need to come to Martha's right now. Police? His voice cracked. What's happening? Your wife has been stealing from both of us. She forged my signature and transferred my life insurance money offshore. There was silence, then a choked sob. Oh God, Mom. I think I signed something last week. She gave me these papers while I was taking my sleeping pills. Said it was just insurance stuff. My blood ran cold. Get over here now, Stephen. And don't tell Ellie where you're going. 20 minutes later, my son sat in Martha's living room, ashen-faced as Detective Reynolds explained the growing evidence against his wife. The house sale is scheduled to close tomorrow, Stephen whispered. She said it was all legal, that you had agreed to it. Script part separator . I've never seen my son look so broken. The realization that the woman he loved had been systematically destroying his life hit him like a physical blow. I gave her power of attorney 6 months ago, he admitted, voice hollow. She said it would make managing our finances easier while she pursued that big promotion. What promotion? I asked gently. At Davidson and Brown, the marketing firm. She's been working late for months preparing for this huge gala presentation next week. It's going to secure her partnership. Detective Reynolds made a note. Davidson and Brown, you said?
Yes. Why?
The detective exchanged glances with Doug. Because according to our preliminary investigation, your wife hasn't worked there for over 8 months. She was terminated for expense account irregularities. Stephen put his head in his hands. Then where has she been going every day? That's what we need to find out, Detective Reynolds said firmly. Mr. Wilson, we need your permission to access your home and computers. Take whatever you need, Stephen said, handing over his house keys. I want the truth. As officers headed to execute a search warrant on my former home, Doug pulled me aside. Maggie, there's something else. The gala Stephen mentioned, I know about it. It's not a corporate event. It's a fundraiser for Ellie's new charity foundation. What charity foundation? The Eleanor Wilson Foundation for Children's Education, Doug said grimly. Registered 6 months ago. And guess what its first major purchase is supposed to be? My stomach dropped. A property for their headquarters? Doug nodded. Your house, Maggie. She's been raising money to buy your house from herself. Script part separator equals. The audacity of Ellie's scheme left me breathless. She wasn't just stealing from me. She was building an entire fake charity to launder the proceeds. Detective Reynolds returned 2 hours later, her expression grave but satisfied. We've seized multiple computers and documents from your home, Mr. Wilson. The evidence is substantial. Stephen looked up, his eyes red-rimmed. Tell me. Your wife has been operating what appears to be a shell charity, collecting donations from wealthy individuals. The foundation has raised nearly $1. 2 million, but not a penny has gone to any children's education programs. Where did it go? I ask, already guessing the answer. Multiple offshore accounts, Detective Reynolds confirmed. And we found something else. A draft contract for the sale of your original house, Maggie, to the foundation at 3 times its market value. Money laundering, Doug muttered. Exactly, the detective agreed. Buy the house with donated funds at an inflated price, pocket the difference. The charity then sells the house at actual market value, writing off the loss. Classic scheme. Stephen looked physically ill. Where is Ellie now? As if in answer, we heard screeching tires outside. Through Martha's window, I could see Ellie storming up the walkway, her face contorted with rage. Behind her, 2 officers were approaching cautiously. The door burst open without a knock. You backstabbing witch! Ellie screamed at me, lunging forward before the officers could grab her. You've ruined everything. Script part separator equals. Detective Reynolds stepped between us. Eleanor Wilson, you're under arrest for fraud, forgery, identity theft, and elder abuse. You have nothing. Ellie spat as the officers restrained her. Nothing. We have everything, Detective Reynolds replied calmly. Your computers, your offshore accounts, the fake charity documents, the forged trust papers. Ellie's face went from rage to calculation in an instant. Stephen, she said, her voice suddenly soft. Honey, this is all a terrible misunderstanding. I was trying to protect our future. Our children's future. My son stood up slowly, looking at his wife like he was seeing her for the first time. By stealing from my mother? By forging documents while I was sedated? That's protection? The old bat was bleeding us dry. Ellie hissed, mask slipping again. Living in our house, eating our food. My food, I cut in. I paid for groceries every week with my Social Security. Your mother is a leech, Stephen. I was building something for us. Stephen shook his head. No, you were building something for yourself. At everyone else's expense. Even our children's. As the officers led Ellie away, she shouted back at me. This isn't over, Maggie. The gala is still happening. The foundation still exists. I have powerful friends. The door closed behind them, leaving a heavy silence. Is that true? I asked Detective Reynolds. About the gala? She nodded grimly. Unfortunately, yes. The charity itself isn't illegal, just what she was planning to do with the money. The event is scheduled for Friday night at the Westbrook Hotel. A plan began forming in my mind. Then perhaps we should attend, I said, surprising everyone. I think it's time Eleanor Wilson's donors learned exactly what kind of charity they've been supporting. As the dust settled from Ellie's arrest, I knew the final act was still to come. The gala would be her ultimate humiliation and my complete vindication. On Friday evening, I arrived at the Westbrook Hotel in a borrowed dress from Martha, with Stephen on one arm and Doug on the other. Detective Reynolds followed discreetly behind us with 2 officers. The ballroom was spectacular, crystal chandeliers, champagne fountains, and meticulously dressed socialites chattering excitedly about the revolutionary children's charity they were supporting. And there, at the center of it all, was Ellie, somehow released on bail, looking pristine in a designer gown, working the room as if nothing had happened. She froze when she saw us. Ladies and gentlemen, the MC announced, please welcome our visionary founder, Eleanor Wilson. The crowd applauded as Ellie took the stage, recovering her composure quickly. Thank you all for coming tonight, she began smoothly. The Eleanor Wilson Foundation represents my lifelong commitment to children's education. Is that what you call fraud these days? I called out, my voice carrying across the ballroom. A hush fell over the crowd. My daughter-in-law isn't funding education, I continued, walking toward the stage as Detective Reynolds handed out documents to stunned guests. She's been stealing money, first from me, then from all of you. Ellie's face contorted with rage. Security. Remove this woman. Actually, Detective Reynolds announced, stepping forward and displaying her badge, Eleanor Wilson is currently under investigation for multiple felonies. Perhaps your donors would like to see the evidence? The projector screen behind Ellie suddenly lit up with damning financial records, forged documents, and offshore account details. As murmurs of shock rippled through the crowd, I took the microphone. I never thought at 63 I'd be homeless, betrayed by family. But tonight isn't about revenge. It's about truth. Because when someone takes everything from you, the only thing you have left is your voice. The room erupted in chaos as donors demanded refunds and reporters who'd been invited to cover the charitable event started frantically taking notes. Ellie was finished, socially, financially, legally. Stephen put his arm around me as we watched her being escorted out by police for violating bail conditions. Mom, he whispered, can you ever forgive me? I squeezed his hand. Family isn't perfect, Stephen. But it's worth fighting for. 3 months later, I moved back into my original house. Stephen and the children live with me now, rebuilding our lives while Ellie awaits trial. Sometimes betrayal breaks you. Sometimes it reveals a strength you never knew you had. And sometimes, just sometimes, it leads you exactly where you were meant to be all along. If you enjoyed the story, hit that subscribe button and share it with someone who needs to be reminded of their own strength. Because trust me, we all have more power than we realize.